So again, the Michigan program fit me well because it didn't require a particular research project. We did a variety of different things. So I ended up doing a couple of different things. I did a lecture recital on Spanish music. I was very, very interested in that. I did a paper and a workshop on sort of centered around Bloom's taxonomy and how to do student evaluations, like how to measure student achievement in a lot of ways, and how to write questions and how to put together activities that actually get to the heart of what you're trying to accomplish.
Hi teachers, welcome back to the Topcast. Today we are talking about the magic of exploring outside your comfort zone with the amazing Jason Sifford, who I'll introduce you to in just a moment. This is a great episode because Jason, we explore how he came to come into music early in his life, move into academia, and then move very quickly out of academia into running his own studio and now composing. It's a really great story, and Jason is a really fun guy to hang out with and chat with. So I think you'll really enjoy exploring his story with us today. And hopefully it may be the catalyst or trigger that some of you listening may be to go, oh, maybe I could do something like that. Or, wow, that's just a push I needed to jump out of my comfort zone as well. Before we dive in today, just a couple of updates from the top music world. Firstly, our Guitar Hacks library is expanding regularly in the Academy. And if you are a guitar teacher or you know of a guitar teacher, please tell people about this. You have to check out one of Michael's latest. It's called the Iron Maiden trick, where teachers can learn a super easy trick with a massive payoff that's sure to delight any students who are a fan of hard rock, heavy metal, and the mighty Iron Maiden. He teaches this with an electric guitar with a distorted tone and a smidge of delay and reverb to the sound. It's great fun. And it's the kind of thing that I love releasing with our quick wins in our main academy for the piano teachers as well. These quick ideas, 5 or 10 minutes, grab this new tactic that you can just use instantly with some students. And so that's exactly what we're creating with the Guitar Hacks library as well. So go and check out the Iron Maiden trick if you're one of our Top Music Pro members. If you're not yet a member and interested in joining and accessing all the guitar resources, or you know someone who would be, then please send them over to topmusicpro.com. By the way, did you know that back in May 2020, we released a colouring book of all our great top music illustrations? Yes, that was the time during the pandemic when people were really looking for ways to chill out, I guess, and try and relax, and adult colouring was talked about lots. And so we had our illustrator remove all the colour from our illustrations and put them together in a book, and you can actually download it for free. We thought, why don't we just share this around? So anyone that's interested in chilling out with some adult colouring, or could be actually, we've got lots of our members use these with their students actually too. You can download it for free by heading to our show notes page for today's episode, where we've put a download link, and the episode is at topmusic.co/episode 283. Go and enjoy it. Let me know what you think. Love to know how it goes for you. Our guest today, Jason Sifford, NCTM, is a freelance pianist, teacher, and composer with a wide range of abilities and interests. He maintains a private teaching studio in Iowa City and is in demand as an adjudicator and clinician, lecturing on such diverse topics as classical performance practice, jazz pedagogy, technical development in young pianists, composition, and music technology. He's currently a commissioner of the MTNA Certification Board and the chair of the Independent Music Teachers Committee for the National Conference on Keyboard Pedagogy. Jason, welcome to the show. Jason Sifford, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
It's good to see you.
We were just talking before we started about how we've often crossed paths at conferences, but never really got a chance to hang out and chat. So I'm glad we've got this opportunity finally to do that.
Yeah, me too. It's always difficult at conferences because they're so busy and there's so much going on. And I know, at least for me, I actually really treasure these one-on-one conversations. They're just a little, I don't know, they're easier for me. I enjoy them more, to be honest.
Well, I certainly enjoy it. And today we're going to kind of unpack a bit of your career and background, because you've actually had a really interesting career, which a lot of teachers who may know of you or know of your compositions or whatever it is, or may have seen your name floating around Facebook groups, may not know actually where you've come from and what you've done. And I found it really interesting to know that you started in a tenured university role, and then you became part of a community music school, and then you moved to start a studio from scratch in a new location, and now you're working as a composer as well. What is clear, or seems to be pretty clear, is that you're obviously comfortable taking risks and pushing yourself out of the comfort zone. And so I thought it'd be good to explore that as a topic today, because as music teachers, it is really easy to get into that comfort zone where we teach the same things, the same pieces, same kinds of students, and don't really change things up, which is why I love sort of throwing out new ideas for teachers, because it does kind of get them reinvigorated and motivated. Because sometimes, that comfort zone can make things a little bit stale and need a refresher. Anyway, well, am I being unfair? Firstly, is or is
no?
that
I don't think so. I mean, the funny thing is that I never think of it as taking risks, because I'm kind of risk averse. Like I get scared and anxious about things, but for some reason, I just seem to be comfortable outside of my comfort zone, if that makes some weird kind of sense. And it's something that it became a pattern in my life. And then I just eventually came to embrace it and keep doing it over and over again.
Well, I want to see if we can go back to where it started, because I want to lead up to that point where you became a tenured professor or associate professor. What do you call them? What was your role there?
I started out as an assistant professor, and then ended up as a tenured associate professor for 2 months.
Okay.
And then left.
All right. We've got to unpack that, because I know that, yes, tenure in America in particular is very tightly held. So that would have shocked a lot of people, I'm sure. Let's just go back though. Can you remember your lessons as a child? I'm always interested to know whether they were quite traditional and strict and the ruler came out, or whether it was relatively creative and fun. Tell us about your childhood music.
My first lessons, I started when I was in second grade. And there was a piano teacher that lived like across the street from my elementary school. And I just started taking lessons, and they were like just very comfortable, but low key traditional lessons. Like I would go and we did the Glover Garrow method. And
I haven't heard of that one.
No, it's old. It's not really around anymore. You'll see it at flea markets every now and then. But it's one of those things. It's like, I would go in and I would do my pages in my theory book and in my lesson book. And it was always cute. Every time I finished a page, she'd put a little sharp down in the corner to say that I'd, completed that page, and just did that. And I really enjoyed it. I had my little book bag, and I would carry it over on, whatever day of the week my lessons were. Wait in the waiting room and play puzzles and games that she had in a basket, have my lesson for a half hour, and then walk home. And that was pretty much it.
And were you a practicer?
I was a practicer. Yes. Well, I played a lot. I really enjoyed playing, and I enjoy a good puzzle and figuring things out. So I liked that part of it. I was not a good polisher.
Okay,
so I would get things and then once I had figured it out, okay, that's how that piece goes, then I was kind of done with it.
That may be linkable to what you do in your career as well. It's kind of, well, I've done this for a while, let's go on to the next thing.
It's a pattern.
Yeah. And I there's elements of me in that pattern. I was never a polisher either. I just wanted to try new things and learn the next song from the radio that I heard and go on to this. Having to actually perform and do exams was challenging for me. I really had to focus and play the right notes. I was terrible at playing the right notes. Much prefer company and sight reading.
Performing was terrifying for me, and it took me a while to get used to it.
So take us through the teenage years and then into the early 20s. How did that look for you leading into being working in universities? That
ends up being a very checkered past, because what ends up happening is that teacher, she quit teaching to go back to nursing. She was a nurse. I had another teacher for a short time who I didn't like, and I doubt he liked me. So that only lasted a year. I had another teacher, and then she quit teaching to go into like wedding planning, I think.
By this stage, you're asking yourself, what am I doing?
I know I've driven all these teachers away. Anyway, so I was in and out of piano lessons all the way through the end of high school. What I was blessed with was a string of truly wonderful public school music teachers, from my elementary school all the way through middle school. And then when I got to high school, I did choir and I did band and marching band and jazz band. I even played harp parts in the orchestra. For a short time, I was literally the last chair, second violin in my middle school orchestra.
And you were playing a band instrument as well?
I did mallet percussion.
Oh, you were doing, okay, yep, great.
Because it fit well with piano.
Oh, yeah, I did that. I love percussion.
It was a lot of fun. I remember I auditioned for like all region band in Missouri, and I got in, and then it turned out that I was the only person who auditioned that could read bass clef. So they put me on timpani, and I had never, this may be like the beginning of outside my comfort zone thing, but I had never touched a timpani before. And so they grabbed a percussion major from the university who stood next to me in rehearsals and would basically like point to the timpani head and say, okay, hit it there. And I would, okay. And I did. It was so much fun. It was an absolute blast. But yeah, it's just, complete luck that, well, I auditioned and I could read bass clef. So I guess I'm in and I get to be the timpani player.
So you were started with piano, you've then explored strings and percussion mainly through the music programs in your school. So band, so you weren't having one-on-one instrumental lessons as much at that stage? Okay.
It was all at the school.
And then what did you do? What was your university course that started you back into music as a full-time thing?
So that's also a funny story because I entered university as a chemistry major. I was majoring in the sciences.
What?
And
okay.
It turns out that when I went, and I wanted to continue lessons because I really did like piano and wanted to continue improving. So I had auditioned for a special scholarship that they had for music minors. And I'm like, well, that's perfect. I'll minor in music while I'm doing the science thing. And, I needed the money and it was perfect. And I ended up getting it. My audition was completely bizarre because at that point I'd been like self-taught for a year and a half. So I played the slow movement of the Bach Italian Concerto. And then Keyboard Magazine had published the cadenza from the Keith Emerson Piano Concerto. And I was obsessed with it. And I learned it, and I didn't know any better, right? Like I just figured Keith Emerson's a pianist, so of course they had no idea what I was doing.
Great contrast, though.
But they saw something, so they give me this, and it turns out they had a brand new piano faculty, and this was his first job out of his doctorate. Anyway, it turned out to be Logan Skelton. He's now senior faculty at the University of Michigan, but he was wonderful. And I found myself in lessons with him. Chemistry building, turns out, doesn't smell very good. I thought the music people were a lot of fun. And so even though I was probably a little bit of a better scientist than musician, I ended up changing my major at the end of my sophomore year. And there I was just hooked.
So you then studied music full-time?
Then we went to music full time. It took me 5 years to get my undergrad, but I pulled it off.
And in performance?
It ended up being in performance. That's the only degree that they offered. And, as I mentioned earlier, I was not a great performer. But it's one of those things that's like, the only way to get better at it is to do it a lot. It was nice. I was at a smaller school. I went to Missouri State University. And it turns out when you're at a small school, it's easy to get a lot of performance opportunity because there's just more room for a new undergrad who's a little bit clueless.
Okay.
So I ended up, instead of doing a senior recital, I did a sophomore recital, a junior recital, 2 senior recitals because it took me 5 years, accompanied friends I played in the early music ensemble and learned to read figured bass. I just kept myself busy with all kinds of things. I will freely admit that like the first 2 years, I was pretty bad, and it was rough. Um, but there's the only way.
Only way is up.
The only way is through. You just got to go through it.
And you obviously enjoyed it enough, and you did well enough that you were then able to, or that you then thought, oh, maybe I might become a teacher of this. Did that happen at some stage towards the end of that degree, or did you go out into the world and do something different and come back to academia?
So in another enormous moment of luck, there was a teacher in my hometown who do you know about this? You might not.
No.
I'm from Springfield, Missouri. And so there was a teacher, Marilyn Lowe.
Oh, Marilyn Lowe?
Yeah, who was working on this new method.
Music moves for piano.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there was a teaching practicum through the university where they would pair students with a local teacher to go sort of shadow and learn the ropes. And so I ended up at Marilyn Lowe's house when she first had started developing music moves for piano. And I kind of started learning that while she was learning it and going through that with some of the very first students to do that. But that was, also just a magical moment because it's like, that was the first time that I actually like saw somebody learn how to do it. And
do music, the music learning theory approach.
Learn music. Like they could feel it and understand it and then be able to gain some independence doing it. It's like, that's such a wonderful thing. And
I see, because you hadn't taught before this.
I had not taught before that.
So that was your first experience. I understand.
Yeah. And that was it. And just the idea that like, you can actually like help somebody learn to do the thing. That's just amazing to me. It's like, I want to be a part of that. Like, that would be really neat to be a part of just somebody learning how to be a musician.
Right. I understand. So that's quite unusual for music teachers because most will say they started when they were even in their teens. Before they finish school, a lot of teachers begin teaching the child down the road or the sibling or whatever it is. So you didn't actually come to teach until you were how old?
This would have been, I probably would have been about 20, maybe even 21.
Okay. All right.
When I started teaching.
So you were hooked. Obviously, Marilyn's approach resonated with you and you saw what the value was with it. So Then you took on some students of your own?
Well, I kept teaching through that program.
Okay.
And then when I started looking at going to graduate school, I started looking at programs that had like preparatory programs. So I ended up at Louisiana State University. They had a really nice preparatory program. My advisor was pedagogy faculty there, Kathleen Roundtree. She was also wonderful. And I ended up with, I think, about 8 students in that program. Enjoyed working with them. And it's one of those things. It's just like, if I like doing it, I'll just keep doing it.
All right. And so that's so you did an undergrad degree. You then went and did a graduate degree, which was what, a master's?
Yeah. So that was a master's.
Okay. And then you're obviously right into this because you probably did a doctorate, did you? I don't even know.
I did. After that. And that the doctorate is in pedagogy. University of Michigan had a doctorate in performance and pedagogy. It's kind of a dual kind of program. But they had a really well-established pedagogy program with Joanne Smith was the head of it. Also, just a really great experience. They had a prep program. She was kind of brilliant in that she was a very good planner. We had, lesson plans and sort of this format where like the students did classes and she taught the classes and we would observe and watch. And then the students would all have private lessons with us. And then we'd video them and then we'd just talk about the videos and all the different things. And that was the first time that I really had like intensive training in teaching. And that was like, I kind of had all these little light bulb moments where it's like, oh, maybe I could be good at that. Or I can get, the idea that you can actually get better at teaching. Because I think until then, I thought it was like, some people have a knack for it and some people don't. And I think that's true. Some people do have just a knack for, connecting with students and helping them out. But it's also something that, you can just get better at. And that's when I really started like working on myself. Like I want to be good at this.
And what did you research for your PhD?
So again, the Michigan program fit me well because it didn't require a particular research project. We did a variety of different things. So I ended up doing a couple of different things. I did a lecture recital on Spanish music. I was very, very interested in that. I did a paper and a workshop on sort of centered around Bloom's taxonomy and how to do student evaluations, like how to like measure student achievement in a lot of ways, and like how to like write questions and how to put together activities that actually get to the heart of what you're trying to accomplish.
So you get your PhD, then how does it come that you get invited to, or do you apply to actually work in the university?
Yeah,
How does that work?
it's an application process, and back then it's a little different now, but this would have been in 2001. There's a couple of places where you could go and see a list of open positions for different universities. Back then, it was less competitive than it is now. Right now, it's kind of a nightmare for people trying to do this. But back then, I was applying for jobs that I thought I would be a good fit for. I applied for, I think, about 20. I got shortlisted at 4 or 5 of them and went to 2 interviews and then got a phone call and just took the job because, you take the job.
Right. And so because I haven't worked in academia before, help me understand, you have a doctorate, which is obviously important. I imagine it's probably a prerequisite. When you get given your role, that's when you get given the title of associate professor. Is that right?
Yeah. In the US, at least, you start out as an assistant professor, which is usually about a 6-year period of time during which you kind of do the things that you're going to do. And then after 6 years, you go up for tenure, which is a little bit more job security and usually comes with a pay raise and rank and that kind of stuff. Like it's a pretty established system. So I was hired as a professor of pedagogy. The biggest part of my job there was organizing, overseeing, and teaching the piano classes for the undergraduate curriculum. And then I'd also, taught some lessons. I would do pedagogy classes. And then I accompanied some student recitals and faculty concerts and things like that.
And which university was this?
Oh, this is Texas Tech University. It's in Lubbock, Texas.
Okay. So did you do the 6 years assistant professorship and then you were given the tenureship, which you then didn't stay very long for? Is that how it worked for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's one of those things. It's like during those 6 years, I ended up meeting my wife. And she was in med school at the time. And the medical school at Texas Tech had this program where they would send a number of the medical students to a campus in El Paso. So she wanted to go there. It was a program that, El Paso was an underserved community. At the time, they really desperately needed doctors and all the help they could get. So she went down there to help them out, and I followed because, that's what you do. It's the people in your life. It's not always the things that you do or the title you hold.
That was the main reason for you moving on sooner than you would have otherwise done.
Yeah, yeah, and it's one of those things. It was really interesting to see reactions when I did that because as it's tenured positions are difficult to get, and once you get them, you just keep them forever because it's kind of a sure thing and guaranteed
great
income
benefits
and a
all
job.
that, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean it's a great gig. I had the interesting experience is that I had a lot of colleagues come to me and tell me I was doing the right thing because, it really does need to be about family and relationships and the people in your life and what you really want to do. And then I also had like this deal with myself. It's like, okay, look, and I talked to myself and I'm like, Jason, if you are worth anything as a pedagogy professor, you ought to be able to actually just go and do the thing that you're teaching people to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Which you
of
had
course,
done in the previous years, obviously.
and I had done in the previous
Yeah.
years.
Yep.
So, and I had continued, I had younger students while I was there, just about a half dozen. I knew I was going to have to bump that up to make a living. But, it's one of those things. It's just, I always kind of tell myself, it's just like, I just need to work on this. I'm going to get good at it. I'm going to figure out how it works. And it was at a time when not a lot of people were doing that, but some people were.
Doing what? Sorry.
Just going into like the whole freelance independent teacher thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And people nowadays have gotten much better at it. And I've kind of learned alongside them. I mean, there's so many more resources nowadays. I mean, like with the work that you've done, when I started doing it, I remember that was like the beginning of Wendy Stevens's website and work. So I found that to be tremendously helpful. But, there it supports everything. Moved to El Paso and worked at a community music school and taught in the public schools for a bit.
Yeah, okay. So complete shift. So had you either not met your wife or had your wife not moved to El Paso, you could have had a very different life, I guess.
I could still be in Lubbock. I could be somewhere else in the country. I have no idea.
Interesting.
Like I've been in Iowa for 14 years. This is the longest I've lived anywhere.
Okay, we'll get to how you got to Iowa in a second. So back to El Paso, you joined a community music school. So a community music school is what is that? I don't know the term over here.
There are a few different models in the United States. Some are nonprofit and some are for-profit. And it just depends on like the business structure and things like that. The one I worked at El Paso was the El Paso Conservatory. It's a small for-profit music school. The guy that ran it was director of the El Paso Opera and really had deep roots in the community and was really well loved and had built this really incredible conservatory. It was run out of a church. He had a large children's choir. They taught voice. They had theory classes. They needed a new piano teacher to help out. I started with about a dozen students and it was great. So and again, it wasn't completely unlike those prep program experiences I'd had at the colleges when I was in school. So, I walked in and said, sure, I can do this and figured it out. But no, it was a great experience. They were a lot of fun to work with.
Did you continue to use any elements of music moves for piano?
In a way I have. I use a lot of the ideas. I think since my upbringing and some of my training in college was more Kodai based, I tend to do more of that in my teaching. I use a lot of the piano safari method now. And a lot of that's just because it's familiar and flexible with me. Also, I got into the habit of it when I was in Texas because Texas is a very strong Kodai state in the public schools. And so I found that if I spoke the Kodai language and did Kodai activities in lessons, it would really kind of have a good synergy with what they were learning in their school classes.
So how long did you stay in El Paso? Because that's not the end of the story. When did you then move from there?
That was just a quick year and a half.
Right. Okay.
So we did that. And in the US, the way medical school works is that at the end of med school, all the students rank programs where they would like to do their residencies. And then it gets fed into this big computer. And then there's this thing called match day in the middle of March. And everybody gets together and opens an envelope, and it has the name of the hospital and city and state where you will be moving in 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
And then you just go.
It's like a army or assignment kind of thing.
Yeah. No,
wow.
It absolutely is. And it's,
okay.
It's how they make sure that you get medical care to all parts of the country and get people, evenly distributed amongst different specialties and things. But it's a whirlwind because you have 3 months to uproot your life and go live somewhere else. When we were thinking about places to go, because you do get to rank programs that you're interested in. My wife is nice enough to she included me on that process. So it's, so I started looking at all the places that had programs that she liked. And I'm like, well, I know people there and people there, and that's a pretty good music town. And that's a good town for the arts. And so it narrowed down the options to at least, 4 or 5 cities in the US where I knew there was a strong arts community and I could probably, make a go of it. And Iowa City ended up being the name on the envelope when we opened it. So I promptly called the 2 people I knew who lived in Iowa City and said, "Hey, I'm
coming.
Moving to Iowa in 3 months, so can you help me out?"
Brilliant. And then you start again from scratch. So you didn't join a music school then. You thought, okay, I'm going to go on my own. I've seen other people do it. I'm reading more and more resources, seeing more and more resources out there about it. It's time for me to go independent.
There is. And I mean, some of it is, I grew up on like the very low edge of middle class. So like finances are always like forefront in my mind. And so when I moved there, I'm like, okay, I need to actually like pay the bills. As it turns out, yeah, I married a doctor, but medical residents do not make great money at all. So, we had the bills to pay. So there was a teacher that was leaving town. So I got 6 of her students.
That's
I
serendipitous.
Sent emails to, every elementary school and high school and middle school and college and community college. I sent out a ton of emails.
So you're sending these, because this is great marketing information for people that have to do the same thing. So you send emails to the music teachers in all of these elementary schools around you.
Yeah, music teachers.
Say, hey, I'm here. Love to meet you, or send students my way, or what did you say?
Ton of that stuff. Fine arts director of the school district, all the piano faculty at all the local colleges, even like the chairs of some of the colleges, because I can accompany also. And I'm like, hey, new pianist in town. So got any students that need an accompanist? I joined the local MTNA chapter, ended up joining the federated group, went and introduced myself to the piano salespeople at the local music store. Anything within like 30 miles of Iowa City, they probably heard from me. Like I sent an email to the symphony saying, hey, if you ever need a pianist on one of your concerts, I'd be happy to come play for you an audition or something like that. Just so that, your listeners don't feel bad. Probably 90% of those emails went unanswered.
I was going to ask, how did that go?
It's a cold call and that has a low response rate. But it did start to get at least my name out there. So I found over the years that even people that didn't respond, it's like when my name comes up, it's like maybe they've remembered it.
I heard from that guy once. Kind of thing.
I'm very aware that having a strange last name is probably helpful.
Yeah.
Whatever I do. But yeah, and then that turned into some accompanying at the local university. It turned into getting on a referral list at the music store for people that needed piano teachers. I got referrals from some of the teachers who were full in the local association. My name ended up with a theater who needed a pianist for a musical. And I just started doing all the things.
This is great. You literally just building a startup really from scratch. And
yeah,
I think go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, and it's interesting because, you don't always know what's going to pan out. And so I didn't really have like a clear strategy. I just knew that I needed work and wanted to be busy. And then you just kind of follow where it goes. I remember talking to a teacher in Texas long ago who had built a studio in Dallas. And she said, when you start, you just take everything. Just say yes and forget boundaries and just work.
Yeah.
Just work. Once you start working, once you get into it and you're doing things and meeting people and getting your bills paid, then start to like pull things together and build the life that you want. And so that was the advice that I took. I just cast a wide net. And then over the last, 14 years, I just kind of start picking and choosing. I'm going to do a little more of this, a little less of that. That was really fun. That's got, some interest for me.
Mm. And composing must appear at some stage coming up here. But just before we get to that, you started with 6 students. You had a bass because you took over from the other teacher. And you're now still in the same place. How many students have you got now? And I know that you do more than just teach, but what's your studio look like now?
I'm at 32.
Well, that's a pretty decent load of students.
So yeah, I've done as many as 45.
Oof. One-on-one. That's
all one-on-one.
Yeah.
But yeah, 30 is about the right number for me. I have this weird thing about just like, again, this goes back to like how I want to live my life and what's best for me. But like if I get too busy, then like the quality of my work goes down. You know what I mean? So like when I was teaching 45, 50 students, however many it was, I wasn't as good a teacher as I thought I could be. And it works the other way also. Like, if I get down to like 15 students, then like I can't give them the kind of I don't know, the kind of experience I want to give them, because then we can't really do a lot of recitals and group classes and like have the camaraderie and that we get in the studio. So I like the number kind of where I'm at now. But I mean, one never knows. Maybe I'll have twice as many or half as many in 5 years.
So when did you start making music and composing it?
So yeah, that started actually with a student in Texas, and I had he wanted to learn some jazz, and it was an interest of mine. When I finished up my doctorate, it was all straight classical at that point, and I was completely burnt out on it and just needed to stop doing that for a while. And so I had a friend in Texas, actually a couple of friends, who had a little jazz quartet gig, a little Friday night gig at a bar, and they would let me sit in with them. And so I used to just go and hang out and then sit in and learn jazz. And I'm just like, figuring it out because I have a decent
osmosis,
ear.
Just to
pretty much. Yeah. And like, I mean, this guy Royce would like sit next to me and like I do something and then like he'd be like, you shouldn't do it that way. Do this. And I'm like, okay, sorry, I'll do it like that. So that was great. And then while I was doing that, I had the student who wanted to learn some jazz pieces, and we'd been through, a couple of the books that were popular at the time. And so I wrote a thing for him, and it turned out that he liked it. This is kind of a funny story. There's a moment in it. It was like one of these little fifth and sixth, things that we all do, a little blues tune.
Yep.
But I ended up writing this. But anyway, it was one of these funny things where like I had written it in 4/4 and he kept skipping a beat in this one bar. And so I turned it into a 3/4 bar.
Oh, the student kept skipping a beat.
Yeah, he kept skipping a beat. And I just,
so you did a boogie in 3/4.
He had this one phrase. It's just like bump 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 bump, and then I don't know. So I changed it into a 3/4 bar. I was very proud of myself. I thought it was very clever, and he really liked it. And I'm like, yay, this is so good. And then, of course, my girlfriend, the one that would become my wife, she's like, you should get this published. And I'm like, nobody's going to publish that. But she convinced me to send it in. And so I had like 4 sketches that I worked up, and I, put them in the mail, and I knew they would at least open it because they knew my graduate advisor.
Okay. And who's they? Where did you send it?
Oh, I sent it to FJH.
Okay.
Send it into FJH. And again, this is just like, that saying, I'd rather be lucky than good. It turned out that like they had just started a new jazz series and were desperately looking for some people to write in that style.
Sometimes you make your own luck, I think.
Yeah. And then my 4 pieces like show up to him in the mail. And then I get a call from him, and they're like, well, we like 2 of them. The other 2 we don't really like. But we have this new series. So if you could write 10 more as good as these 2, then we'll make a book out of it.
Ah, amazing. And did that
which
happen?
Point I kind of like, I freak out because it's like, well, I've got to do this, 10 times. And anyway, so that became an obsession. And I'm like just working like crazy to put these things together. And I did, and it took me, I don't know, a couple of months to write all these things. And then I sent it in and they took it. That's the book Gumshoes was the first thing that
Okay,
they took.
so that's 10 years ago at least, is it? That you first
I think
published?
that came out I think it was published in 2008, I think is when that was.
Ah, right. Okay. And excitingly, you've just published some new stuff, I believe.
Yeah, which was really fun because I decided to go back to the jazz roots with the new collection.
Tell us about it and what it's called.
Called Keybop.
Keybop, that's right.
Keybop.
I've seen emails about it and stuff.
Yeah, Volume 1 and Volume 2. Willis Music has published it. And the first book is Elementary with teacher duets. I wrote it because I wanted some supplementary material for more modern methods, because as I'm sure you've noticed, more and more modern methods are starting to introduce like eighth note rhythms a lot earlier. Like older methods would, stick to quarter notes forever until like book 2 or 3. And so,
yeah, which I always found funny because Kadai introduces eighths very early.
Yeah, I think it's important.
And you can vocalize it and tap it very easily. So I don't know why it was always delayed. I think it's almost harder to go to multi-beat notes like
I think you're absolutely right.
Than it is to subdivide.
I think you're absolutely right.
So I think it's a good thing.
So I did that, and then the other book is a little bit more of like an early intermediate collection. But those were great because I got to revisit them because I've been, writing ever since. And like it's one of those things, like I started studying and really trying to get good at it. And I get kind of obsessed with things. So I'm like analyzing little Kabalevsky pieces. And it's like, okay, why is that Kabalevsky Takatina? Why has it been popular for, 60, 70 years or however long? And it's like,
yeah. Did you work that out?
I have my own little pet theories.
Just, I think it's left.
I think it's
chordal.
Fun to do. It's like, well, I have 3 rules about how to write music. And these are just like things I've invented for myself. But I always tell people it has to look good, sound good, and feel good. So, it has to look good because students.
When people watch?
Well, no, for the reading.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Look good on the page.
So like the engraving has to be good because students, they're still learning to read. And so anything that's a little odd or a little unfamiliar, they're going to have difficulty with. It has to feel good because they're new at technique. And this is where that Kabalevsky piece really succeeds. Like it just feels so fun to play, just really dig into it and feel awesome. And then of course it has to sound good. Like it's still music. And so, I always kind of ask myself when I write something, it's like, okay, is this kid's mom going to feel like she's getting a concert while she's, working in the office? Or,
for the 100th time.
It's got to be like all 3 of those things. Professional musicians don't need that. You know what I mean? They'll fight through whatever difficulties there are. But students, like the second something gets the least bit tricky, they'll just throw their hands up, and they're tough critics.
And so who's Keybop for? What kind of student?
I would just say Keybop ends up being for a student who just wants an earworm. That's kind of where I start. It's just like I want something that gets like stuck in your head, in your ear, and stuck in your body. And so students that, I think have a good ear, that have a real physicality about them, would enjoy it. I tried to write it in ways that it's not like you have to be a huge fan of jazz, because I think they're catchy enough that, you'll just kind of get it. Like it's got a good groove to it.
I like it.
And I do that with a lot of things. Like, the last couple of things I wrote were geared more towards like a film or video game kind of style. Because again, it's instantly familiar. They'll like get it and interesting. And, they need to be inspired to do the work. And that, of course I want them to do the work.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be so easy or so, like plain that they just sit down and they learn it in a week and then throw it away. I want them to work on it and like feel like they've accomplished something and then, come back to it. I remember, one of my things is like I used to go home for the holidays and, my mom would have like all my old piano books in the bench and open them up. And, I'm like home from college and I'm playing through like, Lynn Freeman Olson's Secret Agent.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you go back to those
Because they're
things.
fun. Yeah.
They are fun.
Yeah. And that's what you've hoped to achieve with Keybop. That same kind of catchy approach and things that students might want to come back to years down the track and just for the fun of it, play through it and relive some memories.
That's like the best thing somebody could say to me is just like, I loved learning that thing like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And same thing for teachers. Like I want teachers to like use the whole book. I have this weird rule for myself. Like I write twice as many pieces as I need to. And then I take like the best half and put them in the book because, they're getting expensive. If you're going to spend $10 on a book, like you want to play more than two of the pieces.
Agree.
So, you need some value in there.
So can teachers go somewhere to hear these pieces or see examples of the books or YouTubes or anything like that?
Yeah, I've got a little bit of it up on YouTube. People can just search for my name. Also, they can just go to like jasonsifford.com. And I built a website for just that. So it's like all the books that I've written. And I think almost everything has like I've performed all the pieces and I put like sample pages up for everybody and then links where they can like go and buy it and stuff like that. So I've tried to make it hopefully easy for people to like find things that would fit, their studio and teaching style and then get a hold of it.
And it's the kind of book that would work alongside working through your method pieces. You could just kind of supplement, or is it designed to be a standalone, you need to work through this? It's not a method as such. It's a collection of cool pieces, right?
Yeah. And they're all like, they all do come from like my teaching and like what I need in a supplement. And so, again, I try to level it so that, like if a student knows D minor chords, they'll probably also know this kind of scale and this kind of finger crossing and this kind of, so I try to keep them in a familiar world. Because that's the other thing, when students are working on things, like anybody can work past one bump in the road. If there are 5 bumps in the road, then practicing is not going to happen. They'll feel defeated and nobody wants to feel like that. People love to have like one difficult thing that they then like, solve, like they master it and they get it. And it's like, yes, I figured out a new thing and I've got this skill. That's great to do if there's one challenge. If there's
and smooth road on either side of the bump.
Yeah, and smooth road. That's my B sections are always easier than my A sections.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because nothing's worse than like, fighting through page 1 and then page 2 is harder. It's a nightmare.
I like it. Well, Jason, what was your website again?
Just my name, jasonsifford.com.
jasonsifford.com. And I got to say, I love your logo. If you can picture, those listening can picture the double F in Sifford is like a fortissimo.
I've just got a fortissimo in the middle of my name. It's like,
that's really cool.
I feel so guilty. There's all this marketing advice out there in the world about logos and stuff. And it's like, I just made italic capital F's in the middle of my name.
It's really good. Really good. Go and check it out if you want to see what it looks like. It's really cool. Jason, it'd be good to wrap things up, but I thought, anyway, any advice to kind of summarize? You've had so many experiences in your life and just chopped and changed, and I can see now it's been great digging in and finding out what was the cause of those movements. And bringing it back to what we said at the start, it is easy sometimes to get stuck in a comfort zone, maybe in a bit of a rut. So what would you say to teachers who might be feeling a little bit like, oh, God, maybe I should push the boundaries here or try this or do something different? What would you say? Any advice for them?
I mean, I think my advice would just be, like once a year, try a new thing. I know I have, and some of them have not gone well. I'm currently trying to figure out group teaching. I'm not good at it yet, but it's kind of on my list. So I have pushed through a couple of group classes with my students. They have been wonderfully forgiving, and we'll get there. But I'm not great at it yet. Sometimes you will find something that you really don't like, and then you should not do that. Sometimes you will find things that you could grow to like, and you should do that, and something to find that you love. Um, Gosh, it's such a huge question. Beware of, what do they call it? Fear of missing out. Like, keep the internet at bay. I love Facebook and the internet, but boy, it gets really easy to see all these teachers doing amazing things. And it's like, oh, my recital refreshments are really bad. Or, you know what I mean? It's like, my kids we don't do recitals, or we don't do competitions. Maybe I should. And I don't know, maybe you should try it. And then if it's not your thing, stop doing it.
Yeah.
And then I guess for a final bit, because I know we got to wrap it up, like, one thing I always remind myself is it's a very, very big world, and there really is room for all of us. So don't fall into the trap that you need to be all things for all people. Like, do your thing, do what you love, be really, really good at it, and then let other people do their thing and what they love. There are lots of people wanting to learn piano out there. You'll find it.
Great way to wrap things up. Thanks so much for coming on the show, Jason.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed today's chat with Jason Sifford, and I hope that many of you took up our invitation from the last podcast episode of joining one of our free Power Hours this week. It was so great to catch people on Thursday at the Power Hour that I run with Laura Kahar here in Australia at 11 a.m. on Thursday. And I hope that if you were able to come and join us, you got lots of things done. That's the whole point of those Power Hours, and they're available to our members 3 times a week in a variety of time zones around the world, just so that we can help you get stuff done, keep you accountable to making progress, and hopefully breaking through some of that feeling of there's just so much information out here. Where do I start? Well, let's get you organized and let's follow along while you get that stuff done. So hope you enjoyed joining us for one of those Power Hours. If you did miss it, then come and join us inside Top Music Pro at topmusicpro.com, where that becomes a regular part of your membership benefits, including the likes of the free monthly sheet music and access to thousands of resources, courses, downloads, lesson plans, and everything that you need to run an amazing studio. Next week on the podcast, we are starting a 5-week series of 5 of my best creative teaching ideas in about 30 minutes each week. And it's actually going to be a rebroadcast of the Hesitant to Hero Challenge that we ran back in April 2021. It's going to be heaps of fun to explore this with everyone on the podcast. So regardless of whether you did the Hero Challenge or not, you will get lots out of going through this material again. We're going to be sharing the audio from the recordings. We've cut them up and shortened them, made them nice and sweet. And we're also giving everyone the opportunity to download the full workbook from the Creative Hero Challenge that we ran about a year ago as well. So stay tuned next week. That's the first in our 5-part series of the best creative teaching ideas that I've ever put together. I look forward to sharing them with you next week. Until then, you've been listening to The Topcast. I'm Tim Topham. I'll speak to you soon. For more information about this episode and to find out how to enhance your own teaching, visit topmusic.co. You'll find everything you need for your studio, from lesson plans to cheat sheets, quick win teaching ideas, and guides on how to build your teaching business. Plus, you'll be connected to a global community of the world's top music teachers. And when you're ready, join hundreds of other teachers around the world by becoming a Top Music Pro member and get access to all our bonus content and flagship courses. And don't forget to follow topmusic.co on social media and subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to it. That's all for today. We'll see you in the studio.